Downing Street has said it's got problems with Russia, and they're concerned about whether or not they're going to be involving themselves in the election. What are your thoughts about all of this at the moment?
The committee of which I'm the chair has prepared over a long period, about 9 months, a detailed report on the threat that Russia poses to the United Kingdom, covering a multitude of topics from espionage, murdering people, as we've seen with the Skripal case, and also subversion and its effect on our closest allies and partners. So it's a wide-ranging report. And I can't go into further detail because it's classified at the moment and hasn't been published.
Is it very concerning to you, Dominic? Is it seriously worrying?
I'll simply say that I think there is a credible and real threat from Russia, but we've produced this report so that the public should be better informed. The problem is that the report was finished by March and then goes through a process called redaction, where we consult the agencies to decide what it is that we can publish. And that is what we set out to do. And by October, we had completed that process, both with the agencies and the Cabinet Office, and had a report that was ready to come out. And we then submitted it to the Prime Minister, which is normally a formality. There has never been an occasion where, in those circumstances, a Prime Minister has refused to agree to publication. And the Prime Minister has 10 days in which to respond to the committee's report, or he has to indicate why it is that he doesn't want to publish. And what's happened in this case is that the Prime Minister has both failed to observe the 10-day deadline, has not given any reason why he will not publish, and then has come out through his press office with a series of astonishing explanations to justify non-publication, including that normally publication will take much longer, that he has to consult other people and other departments, and effectively putting forward what I'm afraid can only be described as an entirely bogus series of reasons for not publishing. I have no idea why he's decided to take this position, and it is unprecedented in the history of the committee, and it troubles me very much.
You've read the report?
Well, it's my report,
right.
And that of the committee, so I haven't just read it. We've compiled it.
And what in it, then, is there that could be, well, you can't tell me, I know, but is there, let me put it this way, is there anything in it that is really damning?
I'm afraid I just can't comment on that. The report has been produced, and I'm not going to comment on its content. That would be leaking it. And this is the other thing. He's also accused some of us of having leaked it. We plainly haven't leaked it. There's nothing that's come out into the public domain that is in any way suggestive of its content, although there has been some speculation by journalists, which I dare say has been based on talking to other sources as to what might or might not be in it. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just concerned that the public, who are entitled to see this report, are being prevented from seeing it without an adequate explanation. If the Prime Minister has a good reason, he ought to give it, or he ought to allow it to be published.
All right.
It's one or the other, and he shouldn't start making all sorts of procedural points, which in my view are completely invalid and a sort of a smokescreen. They're simply not factually based.
Is there anything, you aren't going to answer these questions, I know, Dominic, but I might. Is there anything in it that's going to particularly annoy the Russians?
I have no idea. I suspect with anything with the Russians, they may get annoyed by anything that anybody says about them, but or not say about them. It may be, but I don't. It doesn't. I have no idea what the basis is, and as the Prime Minister hasn't given us a basis for refusing it, bear in mind that this report was cleared by the intelligence agencies themselves as suitable for publication.
Right. Has this, in that case, and I don't know if you saw the interview with Gorbachev on television earlier today. It was fascinating. He's concerned that the relationship between Russia and the West is deteriorating, and he wants something done to bring it back. So whether that might have anything to do or not, I don't know.
It might, but I have to say to you that I certainly would like to see better relations with Russia. But obviously, it's rather difficult to have good relations with a country that seeks to murder people on the other country's soil, and as collateral damage, actually does kill other people. This This is an extraordinary form of behaviour by a state and completely outside acceptable norms. So Russia has a big problem. Its behaviour is making it into a state which is viewed rightly as being outside the international rules-based system. Most of us would regret that for obvious reasons. It would be better if the situation were better and we could have better relations, but it's a two-way process. As I say, I'm not against improving relations with Russia, but we have to be realistic about the threat that Russia poses for us.
Would it cause a problem with Donald Trump? Maybe that's the reason.
I have no idea, and I wouldn't wish to speculate on it one way or another.
OK. Do you think it might have something then to do about your relationship with Boris Johnson?
It shouldn't. I'm chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee. I'm coming to the end of my term because we're about to be dissolved. The committee is made up of members of all political parties. It doesn't just consist of MPs who supported Remain. There are some who are actually quite actively supported Leave during the referendum. It's a non-party, non-partisan committee that seeks to do its very best to provide scrutiny of the intelligence services. If you came and sat in on one of our meetings, you wouldn't know to what political party individuals belong.
No, but you yourself, Dominic, have become a bit of a pain in the backside to Boris Johnson.
If I have, the Prime Minister should be big enough to ignore that when it comes to the issue of a committee report, of which I happen to be the chair. It would show extraordinarily puerile behaviour, if I may say so, if he were to decide that he didn't want to publish it because I happen to be the chair of the committee. That's ridiculous, and it's very poor behaviour if that were to be the case. But I want to emphasise I have no evidence that that's the case at all.
No, but is it at the back of your mind?
No, I don't think it is, because it would be such an indictment on the Prime Minister and his behaviour that I have to hope that that's not the case.
I mean, you say you have to hope, but you have actually criticised his behaviour in many ways before.
I have. But there are things which worry me about the present Prime Minister, if I may say so. In a sense, this story provides a bit of evidence in relation to it. How is it that the government spokesman, in response to a report that we produce, comes out with explanations as to why publication hasn't taken place, which are simply, as I described them, whopping lies? They're just untruths because they are unsustainable on the facts and on what the committee actually does. And this is not an exception. So it does worry me when this happens, because whilst I'm sorry if I have disagreements with the Prime Minister on policy issues, I nevertheless expect a Prime Minister to behave properly in terms of propriety, and I hope that I do too, even when I have disagreements with people.
Do you think this Prime Minister has the right character to be a Prime Minister?
Well, that's for others to judge. My personal opinion probably doesn't count for very much, but I didn't support him for the leadership of the Conservative Party because I didn't think, personally, that he was a right person to hold high office. And that was based on my assessment of him over a period of time, including when he was Foreign Secretary. But others may disagree, and in any case, it should be emphasised that a person may change. And whatever my opinion may be of their past performance, it may turn out that I was mistaken, that their future performance is very much better.
Well, I can't see, and I know you can't tell me much about the report, I can't see any reason why, then, this report has not been released to the public, or the bits of it that haven't been redacted anyway.
Nor can I.
Do you have a gut feeling, though? I know you wouldn't tell us.
No, I don't have a gut feeling. I am absolutely mystified as to why it hasn't been released. In any case, it's created a story that, in my view, was totally unnecessary.
OK. I just want to ask you a couple of other things. I'm sure you are aware the UK's terrorism threat level has been downgraded. Are you surprised at this?
Not necessarily. The agencies make assessments at any given moment as to what they see the threat as being. I'm conscious that there are some very real threats in the United Kingdom, and of course in parts of the United Kingdom, like Northern Ireland, they're really quite serious indeed. But if the agencies take the view that the current position justifies downgrading, that is something which they're perfectly entitled to do. I haven't had an opportunity to question them about that, which we would otherwise normally have, and I suspect as we're going to be dissolved tomorrow, we won't do so. But I certainly don't question their professionalism.
How do you feel about the new Speaker? It's Sir Lindsay Hoyle, who is now the new Speaker of the House of Commons. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm very pleased that Sir Lindsay Hoyle has been elected Speaker. I myself supported Chris Bryant, but as I always said to people, this isn't a zero-sum game. The reality is that there were a number of candidates who, in my view, would have been very suitable to become Speaker. Majority of the House has chosen Sir Lindsay, and I wish him well in his new post. It's a very important post, and having seen him as a Deputy Speaker, I'm confident he'll discharge it very well.
If any of us were to have the benefit of hindsight, do you think you would have played your position differently to now facing the election as an independent without the backing of a major political party?
No. Ultimately, you have to stand up for what you believe in. I haven't wished to end up in this position. It's the government and the Prime Minister's decision to withdraw the whip from me, which has made me decide I will stand as an independent. I'm realistic about my prospects, but I consider that the issues facing our country are so important for the long term, for the future of my children, quite apart from anything else, that it's the right thing to do.
Do you want to get the whip back?
I have no expectation of getting the whip back, so in a sense it's a completely hypothetical question. I will fight this seat as an independent, my seat as an independent, and we will see what happens. The electorate may decide they wish to elect a Conservative MP. They may decide they wish to elect me as an independent standing in the Conservative tradition with a small c, because that's what I am. And it's their choice. That is what democracy and parliamentary elections are all about.
You weren't tempted, Dominic, to perhaps join the Lib Dems?
No, I was not. I'm very respectful of the Liberal Democrats and very grateful to them. But in this particular instance, they've decided not to put up a candidate against me. But I'm perfectly aware that there will be some subjects on which we might well disagree. There will be many subjects on which we will agree. But clearly the subject which preoccupies all of us most is the future of our country in the context of Brexit and the dangers that Brexit poses, principally for the future of the United Kingdom, which if the Prime Minister gets his way, I think is in serious danger of breaking up, and indeed the risk that in fact the Prime Minister's deal is worthless because it will lead to us dropping out of the EU at the end of the transition period with really calamitous economic consequences, and I think that's a very real risk. That brings us together. And they have been kind and courteous enough to say they will support me. There are some other areas of policy with which we may agree. There might be some areas in which we may have some disagreements, but it allows me the opportunity to go to my constituents and offer myself for what I am. It's up to them to decide whether they want me or not.
And if you do not manage to retain your seat in this election, Dominic, will you fight the next election after that, whenever it may be?
I think that's most unlikely. I think if I don't retain my seat, I shall go off and do other things.